Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
I'm a OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another iPopcorn for that review. I'm Chris.
I'm Nick.
I'm Casey.
Yeah, we're back again together. One more time before I leave the state. So we thought we'd talk about a horror movie, since this guy's the biggest fan of horror movies, and this is a 2014 movie that none of us had seen before. So we are talking about Spring. So this came out in 2014. It was directed by Moorhead and Justin Benson. And right off the bat, I kind of want to see, what are you... So you're a fan of these guys already, so what's some stuff you've seen from them and what...
I've seen a lot of their stuff, actually. Their first two movies, I think their first feature films, Resolution, which is great, and they made like a secret sequel to that called The Endless. And there's a third VHS movie, Viral, where all of the segments sucked except for one, and
Which was these guys.
it was those guys that did
Okay.
it. And since then, they've kind of blown up in popularity. They're doing a lot of TV stuff, and they've worked on Marvel now. They did Moon Knight. And
Right.
just recently, I just finished watching Loki Season 2, which they pretty much wrote most of it and directed most of the episodes, and they were pretty good. I was impressed with that season.
Yeah, killing it in the TV space right now. I haven't seen Moon Knight. You've watched Moon Knight, right?
Yeah, it was good.
So I hadn't seen The Endless. There's something called Synchronic.
I've definitely seen those posters before, but I haven't seen those movies.
But yeah, this is an interesting story, and I don't know, the spoiler-free way to talk about it is hard to get into, but you've got a guy here, so our main character is Evan, and right off, like in the first few seconds of the movie, so I wouldn't call this a spoiler, but in the first few seconds of the movie, his mother's dying, and we learn that both of his parents have died recently, and to get away from all this, and all his troubles and everything, and he sort of doesn't have a whole lot of a choice as far as he loses his job, so everything's kind of going wrong. And he essentially runs away to Italy, and that's where our story takes place. What do you say about this? I mean, what do you guys? How did you guys feel about this overall?
What did I just watch? It's very strange. I feel like there's a decent amount of plot holes throughout the movie. That I think, I don't know.
I don't know about plot holes, but I was having a hard time figuring out. I mean, I guess at the end it kind of wraps it up for you in a certain kind of way, but I don't know. Were you as confused as I was kind of waiting for? I didn't go into this knowing a whole lot, so.
Yeah, I went in on it blind, but I guess once he meets the girl, there's probably going to be something up with it. I didn't expect it to go the way it did, but I knew something was going to happen. But yeah, it didn't trip me up too much, because as the story unfolded, I was kind of like, oh, okay, all right. There's one gripe I have about one of the reveals, but I guess we can get to that in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. For some reason, the writing in here or the dialogue or something felt a little unnatural to me, and that kind of kept taking me out a little bit.
It's funny you say. I guess I've watched too many of their movies, and one of their friends of his in the beginning, he's also a director. They're all friends, and I've seen some of their movies. And in the beginning with his friends in the bar, their dialogue and it's kind of over the top. But I've also met a few people in my life that talk just like that, so I wasn't really thrown out. I've met jerks like that before. Okay.
Yeah, this is true. It just sometimes there were some unusual choices in editing, and there were some real moments that kind of stuck in my mind as being
nothing conversation.
What exactly was the point of that conversation?
Yeah.
And there's one where the main love interest character here even says that. She's like, "What was the point of that story?" And he just says, "Nothing, just a funny story." It wasn't a funny story. It's just a story. I'm not sure what the point of all that was, and there's a lot of moments all through this, and there's a couple moments of I thought kind of unusual editing choices where they're
there's some hard cuts for no reason.
Yeah, a little choppy at points for no particularly good reason, except maybe to show the passage of time or something. I think a lot of what goes on in the beginning, I don't know if it goes on for too long, but I'm not sure we needed that much to know. You could have even spent less time on that introductory part and just say the mom just died, or spend a little more time with the mom or something. But that intermediate period where he's getting fighty with guys and he's all out of character for himself and stuff, I guess it does something. But yeah, I don't know. This is an unusual movie. It's weird going into this. I'm sure a lot of people like already know maybe what happens in this, even if you haven't seen it. I don't know. This is a movie I went into knowing very, very, very little, and I felt like I spent a lot of time waiting on what exactly are we doing here. And then when it does start to reveal, I don't know. Didn't it feel like it was pretty late in the movie before we were like, okay, there's something happening that's.
I definitely feel like they could have cut. This could have been like a really tight hour and 20-minute movie instead of an hour and 50-minute movie.
And that's just what it's like with their earlier movies, Resolution and The Endless. It's similar where the third act seems to take a while to get to in the reveals. And that also kind of helped with my mindset towards this movie, like as to what I was expecting. You know, their kind of style and what kind of mind flare they try to throw your way.
Yeah, it's the things that are going on with her are so different from each other. and things, as the movie ends, things start happening a lot quicker. And every time you see her again, you're like, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I thought we were going from this angle, and you just showed me something that means we're going this angle. So are you like a hybrid of? Oh man, hard to talk about without spoiling. But
he seemed really too quick to fall for this girl. I know they were trying to play like a love at first sight thing, but like the way she acted towards him in their first encounter, I'd be like, all right, yeah, never mind.
I feel like they tried to explain that away a little bit with like hormones.
Yeah,
like where it's
pheromones.
like, oh, the pheromones and hormones
That
I put off,
part,
just
yeah.
people go crazy, so you don't even, she's like really, kind of feels like she's trying to convince him he's not really in love with her, and she's not really in love with him and everything, and I started to feel like I could kind of predict one thing about where this was going to go, and I did get that right, which, I won't say here, but yeah, I mean, certainly not a traditional story, but I do feel like you're not going to be... It kind of follows some beats you might expect, even as unusual as it is. But maybe we do have to get into spoilers. This is really hard to talk about. Yeah.
Oh, and I will say the first part of the movie when he's like first hanging out with friends and then he goes to Italy, I was getting... There's this movie called Wake and Fright, old Australian movie. And it's just around this guy on vacation, and he just can't get away from the drunks and people enticing him into get drunk. And like when the whole movie's over, you're like, I never want to drink alcohol ever again.
Yeah.
And I was kind of getting that vibe in the beginning, like he just won't stop drinking.
He won't stop drinking. Oh, and so he meets these two British guys that are also
The most annoying people on the planet.
vacationing in Italy, and I had a hard time dealing with those guys. The writing, I don't think the writing was great, and even if maybe you can find other people in the real world that talk just like that and act just like that, and I can believe that, but I was really relieved when we dropped those guys.
They were pretty over the top.
And we dropped them like a sack of potatoes. Like, they're just like, we're going to go to Amsterdam now. And he's like, I'm not. And they're like, okay, peace then.
I love that, actually. I was expecting them to put up a fight, like, oh, come on, mate.
Dude, that similar situation happened with me when I went to Amsterdam. I took a train from Germany, and I met two guys that were from Phoenix, somehow. And I took it to Amsterdam for the weekend and ended up crashing with them because they had like a cheap hotel room and I didn't make any plans for the first night. And like a day later, they're like, "We're gonna head back to Paris." I was like,
You're like,
"All right,
I'm not.
cool. I'm staying here." Well, I don't know these guys either. I'm not gonna go to Paris with you.
Did they invite you or just let you know? Like,
No,
hey,
they were like, "We're gonna head back to Paris." And I was like, "All right, cool. I'm staying here. I'm going back to Germany after this."
That scene where he goes and tries to pick up some like Italian women is the most like cringy. He's just like, do you guys like me? I don't know. That was that took me out for. I guess the point of that was to show that he has like no charisma or something like that with these women. I don't know, but and I guess that leads up to him meeting our main character here, which I don't think we found out her name until pretty deep into the movie. But the character's name is Louise.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to make it pretty far into the movie to find that out.
Yeah, at first I was like, have I heard her name yet? And while I was watching, I actually had to go on IMDb and look up her name. And then literally 5 minutes later, they say her name. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to hear what you think about this. Do you think that the main guy looks like anyone famous?
I like the actor, personally. I don't know who he quite looks like. What do you think?
I think the first thing that came to mind for me was Sean Evans, like the host of Hot Ones, First Week Feast Hot Ones.
Really?
Like the Hot One guy. But then it's like, he's kind of like a mix between that and Machine Gun Kelly.
I'm crying.
And Jesse from Breaking Bad. He's just like an amalgamation of those three. But
Yeah.
I kept thinking like, well, you need to take her back to your house and make her eat increasingly spicy hot wings. But yeah, and also the other thing, another little nitpick of a thing before we get into spoilers, because it sounds like we gotta. Well, no, maybe two. First of all, is that like multiple wigs she's wearing throughout this, or did they just change her hairstyle a bunch, or something was distracting about the hair? It's like she has really big hair.
I think she just had big hair and it looked off.
I have a theory, maybe once we get into the spoilers
Okay.
of what she's all
Yeah.
about. Like maybe it was intentional.
I'm into that. And then the other thing, this is not a nitpick or anything. It's just it has to be commented on. What is the deal with this farmer and that hat? you were saying,
man, yeah.
You were saying he's got
His hat's just on the side of his head the whole time.
yeah
I've
no
been like, this guy needs a quirk or something.
yeah no Italian farmer has that much drip. Yeah, he was just
That's kind of like in if you watch Resolution or The Endless, like they throw some random characters at you that just have a weird quirk and they never address it.
Yeah,
And
like,
you're just like,
I just-
okay, that guy's in the movie.
I'm just determined to wear my hat sideways all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it'd be hilarious to make a gag with this, where like every time you see him again, the hat has moved further, so it's like on the side of his face. It kind of looked like it was like migrating. Yeah, so we should get into spoilers. There's so
Yeah.
much to say that I can't say right now. So here's your spoiler warning. Stop watching if you don't want to know, like we didn't know going into this. But yeah, what's the first thing that comes to y'all's mind? There's a lot to say.
Well, you find out she's some kind of cryptic creature.
Yeah.
They try to make it sciencey though.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so she explains her job is basically like it seemed like she's a geneticist or something. So you're thinking maybe she had some genetic experiment she's done on herself because she keeps transforming into like at first it's like maybe she's a vampire. No, okay, she transformed
It's
into
just
like
like
a
a werewolf.
She's like a lizard person, an octopus, and she has this like syringe she's always putting into herself to make her turn back to human. So it makes you think maybe she's experimenting on herself. But then, biggest spoiler, you find out she's been around for like 2,000 years, and every 20 years she has to get pregnant, and then like gives birth to herself.
I think it's that she like absorbs.
Yeah,
Tell me if I'm wrong. I think she absorbs the stem cells from her baby, and there's no baby that comes
Right.
out of this. She just becomes like renewed and looks like a different person now, and she has to live another 20-year long life as a 20-something-year-old. We were wondering if she's always like
doesn't
super
explain it,
attractive
yeah.
or not, but it seems like she's like always super attractive for the time period she finds herself in.
She has to find somebody to impregnate her.
Yeah, and she has to find somebody to impregnate her so that she doesn't. Yeah, and then at the ultimate end, it's like, oh, there is one other thing that could happen, which is I don't transform into another person. Somehow, like my body being in love with somebody, which I've never been in 2,000 years. I've never been in love.
Right.
My body being in love produces oxytocin, and that'll block the stem cells from being used, and I'll just regenerate my own adult stem cells, which won't work as well. So I'll just live out a normal human life,
And I'm pregnant.
and I'll be pregnant.
But
Yeah.
does love have to play a factor in that? Because she kind of seems like she always has the choice to absorb her own cells.
I thought they were
but
pretty.
she chooses not to because she wants to keep living.
I thought they were clear about it. Her body makes the choice. She doesn't actually have a choice in the matter. It's about whether or not she's in love, and she
Yeah.
can't even control that. It's like love is the only thing that's going to stop this, and it hasn't happened so far. So I guess I've never been in love, and so the penultimate moment of this movie, which is I have questions about this. We got to talk about the very very ending.
Yeah.
But I guess she's in love. You hear this. You hear sounds happening like you think there's about to be that took me off guard. I will say, I'll hand it to them there because you're hearing the sounds of like transformation,
I kind of liked it.
and then
Yeah.
she's not transformed. She's just her, which means they're in love and they're going to live happily ever after, I guess. Except the freaking volcano is erupting in the background.
Yeah. So it's like
Is it like Pompeii all over again?
Yeah.
I think that's
Because like her family was killed in Pompeii.
yeah, and it seems like it's one of those things where it's like you decide because it could work well either way. Like on one aspect, it's just going off and they can get away and live their lives together,
Yeah.
or it's another Pompeii and they're gonna die, but
But they died in love.
He kind of has like a look of like sad satisfaction on his face. Like, okay, if this is when it's gonna happen, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
and the explanation for why she is the way she is pretty ridiculous because it's like it's Harry Potter. They even reference it in the movie. Like her family's love saved her from the Pompeii explosion.
Yeah,
And
she inherited her mother's ability to like regenerate, right?
Yeah, apparently
Yeah.
her mother was like that too.
And she like forfeited that somehow, which we don't get the mechanics of that unless somebody can work that out. But somehow her mother forfeited that to save them. But I don't know how they don't really go into like somebody. You're saying somebody escaped Pompeii, like somebody just made it out. They ran fast enough to get away from Pompeii explode. I don't know.
And he even asks, like, how did you escape? And she's like, you don't want to know. And then it's like, okay, all right.
They do that a few times to the movie. Like, it's a long story, so they just don't have to explain anything.
Yeah. And I think it does try to build... I want to ask you guys about this, but I think it does try to build a relationship with them. We get a lot of time spent with them talking and stuff and having these deep conversations, and I think they're certainly going for building character development here, and I think they do that. I'm not sure for me if it built something I would really call chemistry. Like, I don't think they necessarily the best chemistry. I was most happy with, like, the end of the movie where he has found her as a monster on the floor, and he decided in that moment not to freak out and run and save her. From then on, I was buying their relationship a little bit more, but it doesn't feel like they have this undying chemistry. Like, they're pretty, they're maybe a little snarky to each other. They're occasionally like a little mean to each other. I don't know. Maybe it's just a weird dynamic, and I guess what can you expect from relationship between like an ever-changing internal monster and a person? But
that and they've only known each other for like 5 days.
Yeah, that's the other thing. This movie feels like it takes place over like 6 months.
Which that's one of those movie tropes in like romances where it's like, you know, they meet the girl and over the course of 5 days falls in love, which
it happens a lot in
probably
movies.
Not unheard of in reality, but
sure,
it doesn't seem realistic. But it's like it's kind of like they were rolling with that trope, you know, like Garden State or Before Sunrise, but we're gonna throw twists. We're gonna do one of those romance, cliches, but we're gonna throw our little sci-fi trippiness into it.
Do you think they took too long to get there, or do you think? Like, how did you feel about the general like runtime pacing of this thing?
I felt like it could have been trimmed down. Like, there was a long time in which he was hanging out at Venice and Italy and everything before he even sees her. And then even once he sees her, you get another, 20 some odd minutes of him working up to talk to this girl again and find a relationship. And then after, like, maybe halfway through is when you finally see her, like, do a weird transformation. Maybe more than halfway through. And I felt like they could have worked a little quicker to get to that moment to keep you more engaged. But I mean, not that I wasn't engaged, but
And all they tell you about what's going on with her is that she's part of the. They actually clarify it more later, and I'm glad they at least said this, but it's not that clear. But part of her transformation process when she's having to it's about to be the end of this. It's time to get pregnant or else. If she doesn't get pregnant, or if she does or not, she's going through all these changes really rapidly, and she looks like we said, all these different things: vampires and lizard people and octopus ladies and whatever else. She's got tentacles coming out of her. Sometimes she looks like she's more than one thing at a time, like some chimera, because she's got like a scorpion tail kind of thing or whatever. I don't know. There's a lot going on, and all they say is like she's transforming into things from Earth's ancient past.
Or evolutionary past or something like that.
And then we're like, whoa, are you saying that there were like vampires are just like long extinct things that existed? And then she's like, oh, it's mixtures of long extinct animals and corpses?
I don't know.
Well, one thing that...
What does that mean?
And like one scene that threw me off too was there's a point where she's like trying to prevent her transformation in a cave, and she's got her bunnies. You know, she
does like a ritual.
She does like a weird ritual. She's writing these runes and everything on the wall in blood, and you're like, okay, this is some kind of she's doing a ritual and everything. Does that play a factor in her condition? And once it's all explained and she's revealing it to the guy, she's like, it's all scientific and everything that I do is my body and what I do. And so it's like, what was that ritual that you were doing then?
Yeah, so she says, like, she makes sure that we know everything about this. Nothing about this is supernatural. It's just there's like this theme throughout of like things that we can't understand with science look like magic, but it's really just things we can't understand. And so this is another case of that. It's not really supernatural or cryptids or whatever. There's all a scientific explanation for all this. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like, if you are so determined, if you've been around for 2,000 years and you're so determined that there's no spiritual element here, and then she's saying, this time something's off, something's wrong this time, I can't control it as well as I could, I can only, the stem cells I'm injecting myself only work so long, this isn't working anymore, and so she's like, out of desperation, I even reached out to the occult, like I even went the occult angle, even knowing that probably won't work, I guess. Is what I took it as. She's like, in desperation, I was like, I guess I'll eat some rabbits and kill some, smear their blood on the walls, and I don't think it like takes. I don't
Maybe,
think
but
that
you
helps
think after
anything.
like 2,000 years, you'd figure
it out,
right?
And they don't really tell us why something's different this time, unless it's that she's falling in love. But they don't. That's not clear to me.
And maybe I missed something, but you know, she has to do this every 20 years. She has to either get pregnant and rejuvenate herself, or just feed on her own cells.
Which hasn't happened yet,
and stuff.
even one time.
Yeah, and so she's at the 20-year mark pretty much. She says something about the equinox and everything. So once she does this, will she be perfectly fine until the 20-year mark hits? Or is this something she always has to deal with, like the injections and having to worry about transforming out of nowhere?
Well, and also, how was she doing? How was she managing all this in the previous 2,000 years? Because technology. I mean, maybe she has like this. Maybe her knowledge of stem cells and how genetics and stuff works is way more advanced than it was for anybody else in the past. But like before a syringe that you could inject yourself with stem cells with, was she just eating like boatloads of rabbits? She keeps talking about how the adult stem cells and rabbit stem cells and all that don't work.
The stem cells in their brains help or something. That's why she had to eat them. But yeah, like,
doesn't
she
really
didn't
work.
have. There's no way she had this serum or whatever she's using. The whole
That is to me
2,000
that is
years.
a whole.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, and it's like she's got this heterochromia, which she hides with the contact. I'm not sure why. Nobody really thinks that's like, nobody's going to like shield their face and run in fear because somebody has two different colored eyes.
She jokingly says it's because an ex of hers made fun of it, but then she doubles back and says, no, he didn't really do that. I think...
Which was weird.
Maybe because there's paintings of her in the past and
So
everything.
it's like,
with
I don't want them to
heterochromia.
spot me.
Maybe she's got a fear that someone out there could hunt her down or
Yeah,
know
like
her
if
from history books.
they notice that I've had this heterochromia the whole time, but I mean it's just not. She's not the only one with. I don't know. Like I've said before,
It has
like
no bearing on the plot. You could cut that whole
Yeah.
thing out.
I think this thing takes a lot of. Well, I think they were trying to show you without saying every time that like all these pictures are other paintings of her. Because they would just sometimes they would just show just a face. And when they're in the museum, which I gotta say, I didn't think I'd be watching 2 movies in 1 week where there's like a whole segment dedicated to like erotic art in ancient Rome.
Yeah.
But here we are, 2 different movies. But they have a whole conversation about that, and just like in the Holdovers, if that wasn't obvious. But they have a whole conversation about that, and she says there's like an image like a like a mosaic, I guess, like an old mosaic fragment that has a woman's face on it, and she says, "What do you think about her?" And honestly, in that moment, I was like, "That's her."
Yeah,
She's been around for 2,000 years.
that's kind of what I was figuring out as well.
But I'm thinking vampire, and then I think at one point we saw, like right after that, we saw her reflection in something, and I was like, untraditional vampire,
Right.
And it seems like sun burns her skin.
Yeah, that was the thing as well. Is like she was sensitive to sunlight and she was getting burned.
Sometimes.
And sometimes. It's not every time.
She sheds her skin too, like a snake at one point, but that doesn't. We don't necessarily come back to that a bunch of times.
One of my favorite lines is when he finally, finds out and catches her transforming in the apartment. And they're at a cafe, and he's like, "So, are you a vampire, werewolf, alien,
felt like
zombie? What are you?" And he's naming off all these monsters.
Yeah.
Like, what are you?
I felt like he was asking the question for all of us, because like that was the perfect time to say, like, can we just get some clarification?
Yeah,
here?
it's like,
Like,
what
what
are
exactly are we dealing with?
And then once she does explain what she is, you're kind of like, oh,
I am more confused now. No, not necessarily, but
more like, I wish you were just one of the other things.
yeah, there's some weird dialogue choices. There's some weird, like, the relationship building. I think it got better at the end, but yeah, what were you thinking there?
Yeah, I guess it did. It was just, I don't know. It was a weird movie.
It
took a little too long.
I had
for
a
me.
hard time. I wasn't drawn into this as much as I wanted to be. I was a little not buying the relationships a whole ton. I didn't. Not to say that it was bad acting, but something about really kind of everyone in this just felt so close to right, but it wasn't quite what I wanted out of it. So yeah, I can't lie and say I was a little disappointed with this. It was it delivers on certainly like a big idea, but I'm not sure. You sound like you might be the most positive about this. Are you feeling like this delivered for you for the most part? Maybe it could be a little shorter, but
It could be a little shorter. There were some flaws, but man, honestly, I personally loved the ending. And
The ending was my favorite part, actually.
Yeah.
The unsuredness of what's happening next after that, and it ended with some good lines. I think some of the best lines.
And like I said earlier, like no matter which way it plays out, it's still kind of a feel good moment. Like it's still somewhat
It's kind of
positive, hopeful.
it's either a tragic love story or a really quirky, offbeat love story. But I think there is some. I mean, you're supposed to question if at the very least, or maybe it's supposed to be just obvious that they die in this volcanic eruption, and that's how the story ends. Maybe everybody kind of that's the takeaway for sure. And I think I pose that question to you guys that are watching this right now, because what do you think? Maybe there's a definitive answer, and we just haven't Googled it enough yet. But what do you think happens at the end there? Is that supposed to be the end of them as living beings, and they just die in a loving embrace? Or
just pull up YouTube, ending explained.
yeah. Find an ending explained video for us, and then just come give us the cliff notes on that.
I won't watch it because half the time they're just full of crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to mention about this thing? Anything that stood out to you? We were kind of laughing at some parts of this. I think that they...
Yeah, I can't remember the parts.
I got a good laugh when he's in Italy with the two British guys, and they just do this long slow motion walk towards the main court of the town they're in, and you see these old guys on a table, like kind of just like staring at them, and I was just like, why are those guys walking in slow motion? Just imagine them saying that. I thought that was funny.
Oh, there's a couple things that are coming to mind. When she sacrifices those rabbits in the cave, is this the anime scene from Kill Bill?
Oh, right.
It's like the most excessive CGI blood ever.
Stabs
Like they
it one time.
stab a rabbit and it's like like a super soaker or something.
Yeah.
There was a pretty bad part of bad CGI I saw when he first discovers her in the apartment and the tail's whipping around.
The tail whipping around was very choppy.
I mean, I would imagine it's a pretty
everything else
low
was
budget
practical.
movie, so.
Yeah, a lot of this you can tell was practical, and when they do CGI, I'm sure their budget, they weren't just overflowing with extra money to put on the budget.
But it wasn't even in full frame. Like, it was just, whipping around in the bottom corner of the screen, and you're just seeing this flash of weird CGI, and it's like...
Almost would have been better without it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just throwing the sound effect, you could hear someone's whipping.
And the other thing was, too, and maybe, chime off in the comments about this, too, but the fact that they spent so much time peppering this movie with little... close-in zooms with insects and centipedes and scorpions and spiders and all this, and I guess my takeaway from that is they're trying to equate how has aspects of all of these different things in her. Or do you think that was just a choice? They did it so much, it feels like it wasn't just the cinematography being I like bugs and stuff.
I mean,
feels like it was something a little more to it than that.
I could think of a gross theory that's probably completely wrong.
Try it.
You know how she mentions over the centuries she's absorbed creatures.
So much DNA and everything.
DNA that she's come in intimate contact with or something, or I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, but I think it's supposed to all be people.
I don't want to say that. I don't want to go that far, but maybe she's done some weird, crazy things with animals and desperate attempts,
eating different things.
Maybe
because maybe she does get
maybe
she does get some rabbit DNA in her every time she.
Could be.
But it's just interesting that she doesn't turn into this absolute mutant over time. The person version of her.
That is part of her transformation is from things she has eaten to get the stem cells from.
Yeah,
that would make more sense.
It's just interesting because the person version of her is not some blob of flesh. It's she always looks like a perfectly normal 20-something-year-old woman.
I feel like there's an alternate version that they probably wanted to do, but maybe because of budget. She mentions when I transform or if I transform, run.
Yeah.
But judging by the poster with tentacles, you kind of have to expect, is she going to just turn into a full-on Cthulhu monster and destroy everything?
Yeah, and they certainly could have gone that angle. And I expected 50-50. She's either going to be in love or it's subversion. No, she's not. She's going to snatch it. We were thinking praying mantis, kind of thing. Rip his head off in the last moment with that tail. But yeah, so all that to say, what are the numbers you would give this movie?
Casey, I'll let you start first.
Casey, what would you give this movie?
I'm a fan of these guys, and I enjoyed this movie for the most part. There's some flaws. Could have been a bit tightened down. Although I will say not my favorite of their movies. I personally like Resolution a lot, and the sequel to that was okay. It was decent. It was a nice little trick sequel. Oh, this is tied to Resolution. All right, cool.
Is that The Endless?
The Endless. Did I say it?
Not just then you did. I think you had mentioned it before, but
Well, the
yeah, I'm
endless,
just clarifying. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if I'd be jumping out of my seat saying, "Oh, this is great," and suggesting it to people, because it's these guys. Their movies are a very particular small audience that like adore this kind of thing, and I can see a lot of people being like, "What the hell did I just watch?"
For sure.
So I would probably. I hate to rate this in the 6s, but for now, I want to just put it right on 7.
Okay.
I don't want to rate it any higher than that, but I'm not sure if I want to go lower than that.
Okay.
I wanted to go higher with this. I think it is a cool idea, and they took some big risks. It pains me to say, but I think I give this like a 5.5 or a 6 actually.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of nothing scenes in this movie. I feel like that didn't have any development of the overall movie, and they kind of just, like I said, they be like, oh, it's a long story for like something that needs an explanation. They don't give you explanations.
Yeah, we don't get the
for
long
things.
story.
So I give it like a 4.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right.
Wasn't my favorite movie.
For what it's worth, we never have clarified exactly how we think about the scale. So for a 5 is dead okay. So I'd give this a little above okay. It's gonna find an audience that's gonna like this more than us. If you like this guy's other stuff, or these two guys' other works, I would recommend this probably more to you. And maybe it sounds like I would recommend others first. Like start with others and see how you feel about them at that point. Yeah, so something like The Endless is a sequel, so
yeah, Resolution, which honestly is also one of those movies where it's like you would either love it or hate it.
Well,
so it's hard to recommend that.
But if you like that one more, I would say try that out and see, use that as a metric to how you're going to like this guy's kind of work, because this is very unique kind of storytelling. The dialogue's written in a unique way, so.
Which is probably why I gave it such a high rating, because I'm familiar with their other movies, and I've grown fond of their particular style of filmmaking and their writing, so.
And it certainly does keep you guessing all the way. This is not one of those where you can completely oh, I know what we're dealing with here. This is your classic girl turns into 14 different types of monsters movie,
right.
and has to fall in love and get pregnant or whatever. Like, it definitely surprises you. So
A+ for effort. It was definitely unique.
Yeah, big swing.
Whether it hit or miss, or to their detriment, it was kind of a little. But I'll give them credit for uniqueness, and that's always great.
So we have yet to find out what we're going to watch yet. It's complicated. There's a lot of things coming out. We got all kinds of stuff coming up before award season and before the end of this year. We got some plans for December, so stay tuned for all that. But in the meantime, check out some of our other videos. We got 2 other videos now with Casey in them. So besides this one, we got the Killers of the Flower Moon review and the one
the holdovers.
The one we just did, the holdovers. So check those out if you haven't already, and if you like this kind of thing, please hit subscribe, share it with your friends, hit the like button, all those kind of things.
Smash
help us
that
out.
like button.
Smash.
You gotta smash it.
You have to smash it or it won't
just
work.
won't do anything.
Destroy your mouse.
Yes.
And stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you. Thanks for watching as always.